My name is Emily Carter, and the day my husband signed the divorce papers, he smiled like he had already won. I remember that smile clearly. We were sitting inside a quiet law office in Austin, Texas, the air heavy with silence, the pen shaking slightly in my hand. 10 years of marriage ended with one signature. No tears from him. No apology. Just relief. What he didn't know was this. That smile would become the reason I rebuilt my entire life. Because this isn't a story about how I lost everything. This is the story of how I quietly took it all back. When I married Daniel, I believed in love the way little girls do, fully, blindly, and forever. He was charming, ambitious, and made me feel chosen. I supported him through business failures, late nights, unpaid bills, and endless promises of one day. I was there when no one else believed in him. But success changes people. The moment his tech startup finally took off, I felt him slipping away. New friends, new confidence, new secrets. He stopped coming home early, stopped asking how my day was, stopped seeing me. Then came her. I didn't find out through dramatic texts or lipstick stains. I found out through silence. The silence when I walked into a room. The silence when my calls went unanswered. The silence when he stopped caring whether I stayed or left. One night, without even looking at me, Daniel said, "I think we've grown apart." 3 weeks later, I was served divorce papers. He wanted the house. He wanted the car. He wanted control of everything we built together. And the worst part? He wanted me to believe I deserved nothing. I won't lie. There were nights I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Nights when I blamed myself for loving too much, trusting too deeply, giving too freely. But pain has a strange way of sharpening your mind. Somewhere between heartbreak and survival, I made a decision. I would not beg. I would not scream. I would not destroy him. I would outgrow him. Here's something I want to ask you. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you lost yourself, and then realized too late that they never planned to lose anything at all? During the divorce process, Daniel underestimated me. He thought I was weak because I stayed quiet. Thought my calm meant surrender. What he didn't know was that I had started remembering who I was before him. Before the marriage, before the sacrifices, before I made my life smaller, so his could grow. I went back to school. I rebuilt connections. I listened more than I spoke. And while Daniel celebrated his freedom, I was quietly laying the foundation for something far more dangerous to his ego. Independence. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday afternoon. As we walked out of the courthouse, Daniel looked at me and said, "I hope you find happiness." I smiled back and replied, "I already have." But that was a lie. Happiness hadn't come yet. First, there would be awakening. Then growth. Then truth. And finally, justice. He walked away thinking the story was over. For me, it had just begun. After the divorce, silence became my closest companion. Not the painful kind, the powerful kind. The kind where you finally hear your own thoughts without someone correcting them. I moved out of the house Daniel fought so hard to keep. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I refused to live inside memories that weren't mine anymore. I rented a small apartment on the east side of Austin. Nothing fancy. White walls. Big windows. Empty rooms that echoed when I walked. And somehow it felt free. Every morning, I woke up alone. No explanations. No arguments. No shrinking myself to keep someone comfortable. Daniel thought I would fall apart without him. Instead, I started coming back together. I found a job at a financial consulting firm downtown. Entry level. Long hours. Humbling work. But every paycheck felt like proof that I was still capable, still valuable. Some nights, exhaustion hit me so hard I cried on the kitchen floor. Other nights, I smiled at my reflection and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked stronger. Daniel, meanwhile, was thriving, or so it appeared online. Luxury dinners. Weekend trips. New friends. And yes, the woman he left me for. Seeing them together hurt more than I expected. Not because I wanted him back, but because betrayal leaves bruises even after you stop bleeding. But here's what pain taught me. Observe. Don't react. While Daniel spent money like success was permanent, I learned how fragile it really was. I listened carefully when mutual friends talked. I noticed patterns. I remembered details. And I remembered something important. During our marriage, Daniel had trusted me with things he never shared with anyone else. Financial shortcuts, verbal agreements, decisions that lived in shadows. Back then, I protected him. Now, I simply remembered. One afternoon, months after the divorce, I ran into him at a cafe near South Congress. He looked surprised, then confident. "Emily," he said, smiling like the past didn't exist. "You look good." I thanked him. He talked about his company, his plans, his future. I listened, not because I cared, but because listening reveals what pride hides. Before leaving, he leaned closer and said, "You know, the divorce was for the best. We're both happier now." I smiled politely, because for the first time I knew something he didn't. Happiness isn't loud. Preparation is silent. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, laptop open, city lights glowing outside my window, and I began writing down everything. Every detail, every number, every promise he once made that now worked against him. This wasn't revenge. This was balance. Daniel believed he had taken everything from me. What he never realized was that he left me with the most dangerous thing of all. Nothing to lose. That realization changed the way I breathed. I stopped checking Daniel's social media. Stopped wondering if he missed me. Stopped replaying old conversations in my head, searching for closure that never existed. Instead, I focused on leverage. At work, I stayed late. Asked questions others were afraid to ask. Learned how money really moved, how companies survived, how they collapsed, and how ego often destroyed both. Slowly, people started to notice. My boss trusted me with sensitive accounts. Colleagues asked for my input. For the first time in years, my voice mattered, and no one interrupted it. One evening, while reviewing a client file, something familiar caught my eye. A startup name. Daniel's company. I froze. It wasn't an official account, just a reference buried inside a larger financial network. But it was enough to remind me that the world was smaller than we pretend. And smaller worlds make secrets harder to hide. Over the next few weeks, pieces began to align. I heard whispers about delayed payments, about an investor growing impatient, about risks Daniel brushed off with confidence instead of caution. The same confidence that once convinced me to sacrifice my dreams for his. Then came the phone call. A former colleague of Daniel's, someone who remembered me from the early days, reached out just to catch up. We met for coffee. He talked. I listened. He didn't realize he was filling in gaps I had already outlined. Confirming timelines. Naming people. Explaining decisions Daniel made without realizing how exposed they were. When I got home, I added new notes to my growing list. Still, I did nothing. Because timing matters more than truth. Daniel, on the other hand, grew careless. At a networking event downtown, our paths crossed again. This time, he seemed eager to impress. He talked louder, laughed harder, mentioned numbers that didn't quite add up. And when he introduced me to his new partner, he squeezed her hand just a little too tight. Possession disguised as affection. She smiled politely at me. I smiled back. Not because I felt threatened, but because I saw fear hiding behind Daniel's confidence. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, looking out over the Austin skyline. I realized something important. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reflection. Letting someone see themselves clearly for the first time and not liking what they find. Daniel believed he had rewritten our story. But stories have footnotes. And I was about to become one he could never erase. Because soon, very soon, he would learn. The woman he underestimated was the woman who remembered everything. I didn't act immediately. I waited. Because when someone is standing on unstable ground, even a whisper can feel like an earthquake. Daniel's company announced a new funding round. The news spread fast, celebratory posts, confident interviews, promises of rapid expansion. I watched quietly. What most people didn't see was what sat beneath the headlines. Tight margins, overestimated projections, dependencies that relied on trust more than proof. Trust is fragile. One afternoon at work, my supervisor asked me to assist on a compliance review connected to a private investment group. I opened the file, and there it was again. Daniel's name. This time it wasn't distant. It was close enough to touch. I disclosed my conflict of interest immediately, professionally, calmly, by the book. But even stepping away gave me access to one important thing: perspective. I knew exactly which questions would be asked, which documents would be requested, which answers would no longer be enough. That night, Daniel called me. It was the first time he had reached out directly in months. "Emily," he said, his voice unusually careful. "I heard you're doing well." I thanked him. Then came the pause. "You wouldn't happen to be involved with any financial reviews lately, would you?" There it was. Fear softened into curiosity. I laughed lightly and replied, "Daniel, you know I keep my work and personal life separate." He agreed too quickly. We ended the call politely, but my hands were shaking. Not from panic. From clarity. For the first time, I realized he knew. Not everything, but enough to feel the ground shift beneath him. Over the next few weeks, things around Daniel started to change. Meetings got postponed. Emails went unanswered. Smiles became forced. And the woman by his side? She started asking questions. I saw it in her eyes the next time we crossed paths, uncertainty replacing admiration. Because confidence collapses when answers stop making sense. Still, I remained invisible. No accusations. No exposure. No dramatic confrontation. Just patience. Because the most powerful moment in revenge isn't when you strike. It's when the other person realizes. You don't have to. Daniel thought I was behind something. The truth? I didn't need to be. He had built his success on shortcuts and silence. All I did was step aside and let the light reach places he never intended to illuminate. One evening, as I closed my laptop and prepared to sleep, a message popped up on my phone. From Daniel. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I smiled. Because conversations like that only happen when someone is running out of time. And this time, I wasn't the one who was afraid. When Daniel asked to talk, I didn't respond immediately. Not because I was unsure, but because urgency reveals weakness. I replied the next morning with a simple message. "Sure. Coffee." We met at the same cafe near South Congress, where he once spoke about freedom like it was something he had earned. This time, he arrived early. His confidence was still there, but thinner, like a suit worn too many times. We exchanged pleasantries. Weather. Work. Neutral ground. Then he leaned forward. "I feel like things are complicated lately," he said carefully. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" I stirred my coffee slowly. "Complicated how?" I asked. He hesitated. Just for a second. Long enough. "Investors are asking questions," he admitted. "Nothing serious. Just routine." I nodded. "Routine can feel personal when timing is bad," I replied. His eyes searched my face, trying to find something: anger, guilt, intention. There was nothing to find. "Emily," he said softly, "I hope there's no resentment between us." That word. Resentment. The excuse people use when consequences arrive. I smiled. "Daniel, resentment is loud," I said. "If I had any, you'd hear it." The truth was I felt none. Only distance. He relaxed slightly, mistaking my calm for forgiveness. That was his mistake. Because forgiveness ends stories. Understanding continues them. After the meeting, I walked back to my car feeling lighter than I had in years. That conversation confirmed everything I needed to know. He was scared but not honest. And scared people make reckless decisions. Days later, a former mutual friend called me late at night. Voice tense. Excited. "Daniel's pushing a deal through," he whispered. "Rushing it. Ignoring legal advice." I closed my eyes. There it was. The crack widening into a fracture. I didn't intervene. I didn't warn him. I didn't save him. because once, long ago, I would have. That night, I realized the most painful part of divorce isn't losing someone. It's realizing how often you protected them from themselves. Daniel was about to learn who he was without me. And for the first time, I was ready to watch. And watching taught me more than acting ever could. The deal Daniel rushed went public faster than expected. Headlines framed it as bold,
visionary,
risk-taking. But behind closed doors, the tone was different. Contracts rewritten, clauses questioned, confidence replaced with concern. At work, I felt the ripple effect before I saw the proof. Analysts whispered. Senior partners frowned at spreadsheets that no longer aligned with promises. Numbers don't lie. People do. One afternoon, my supervisor called me into his office. He spoke carefully, choosing every word. You're no longer connected to this situation, he said, but I want you to understand something. When companies grow too fast, they often forget what's holding them up. I understood perfectly. That evening, Daniel's name appeared on my phone again. This time, he didn't ask to talk. He asked for help. Emily, he said, dropping the confidence entirely, you always had a good head for details. I just need your opinion. Off the record. There was a long silence between us. I remembered nights I stayed awake fixing his mistakes. Meetings I skipped. Dreams I delayed. And I remembered the woman I was now. I don't give opinions anymore, I replied calmly. I give boundaries.
He didn't argue.
Because arguments are for people who still have power. Weeks passed. The woman by his side left quietly, no announcements, no explanations. Just absence. Daniel stopped posting online. Success hates witnesses when it starts to unravel. Meanwhile, my life expanded in ways I never planned. I was offered a promotion. More responsibility. More trust. For the first time, my future felt like mine. One morning, as I walked into my office, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I looked steady, unapologetic,
free.
That's when I realized something unexpected. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Finished carrying his weight. Finished explaining his choices. Finished shrinking. Daniel's downfall wasn't my triumph. My independence was. And somewhere between letting go and moving forward, I understood. The greatest revenge isn't being remembered. It's no longer needing to be. That feeling stayed with me longer than I expected. Life settled into a rhythm. Quiet mornings, focused days, peaceful nights. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to chaos. I was choosing calm. Then Daniel showed up again. Not with confidence. Not with fear. With regret. He waited for me outside my office one evening, standing slightly to the side like someone unsure if they still belonged. Emily, he said when he saw me, can we talk? Just for a minute. I almost said no. But closure isn't something you owe others. It's something you sometimes give yourself. We walked a short distance, the city humming around us. I lost the company, he said suddenly.
Not all at once. Slowly.
Piece by piece. I didn't respond. I thought I was untouchable, he continued. I thought success meant I didn't need anyone. His voice cracked, but I felt no satisfaction. Only clarity. You didn't lose everything, I said gently. You just lost what wasn't built to last. He looked at me then really looked at me. I should have listened to you, he whispered. I nodded. Yes, I said. You should have. That was it. No blame. No forgiveness. No reopening of wounds. Just truth. As we parted ways, I felt something close for good. A chapter. A version of myself. A story that no longer needed revisiting. And as I drove home that night, I knew the ending was finally approaching. Approaching endings are quiet. There are no fireworks. No dramatic music. Just understanding. Months passed. Daniel faded into memory, not because I forced myself to forget, but because my life finally had space for better things. I moved to a brighter apartment. Traveled. Laughed without hesitation. Built relationships that didn't require sacrifice to survive. One afternoon, while sorting old documents, I found a copy of our divorce agreement. I read it once. Then I smiled. Because the woman who signed those papers thought she was losing everything. She had no idea she was being released. I didn't win by destroying him. I didn't win by proving him wrong. I won by becoming someone he could no longer reach. If you're listening to this and standing at the edge of heartbreak, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me. Loss doesn't mean failure. Silence doesn't mean weakness. And walking away doesn't mean you lost. Sometimes, it means you survived. My name is Emily Carter. This wasn't the story of my divorce. This was the story of my return. And it ends right here.